Good evening, and welcome to today's show. The U.S. Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, has been at the center of political and social debates recently, blocking or overturning key policies proposed by the Biden administration. From student loan forgiveness to immigration reforms, the court's rulings have reshaped the political landscape. Today, we'll break down these rulings, their implications, and what's next for Joe Biden as he goes off into the sunset. And what will we see going forward, given that Donald Trump has resumed office as President of the United States? Let's talk about student loan forgiveness. First, student loan forgiveness. President Biden proposed a sweeping plan to cancel up to $20,000 in federal student loans for millions of borrowers. However, in June 2023, the Supreme Court ruled by 6-3 against the plan, stating that it exceeded the authority granted to the executive branch under the HEROES Act. This decision has left over 43 million Americans in financial limbo. Let's just think about what people are saying. One borrower said, "I was counting on this relief to get back on my feet. Now I'm back to square one." Another says, "It feels like the Supreme Court decision doesn't reflect the struggles of everyday Americans." This ruling has sparked widespread protest and renewed debates about how to address the student debt crisis. And based on the Supreme Court decision, we have no decision, basically, in terms of how this will be handled and managed going forward. Let's talk about immigration policies blocked. That's the next topic. The Biden administration's attempt to end the controversial Title 42 policy, which was used during the pandemic to expel immigrants quickly, faced pushback. While the administration argued it was time to restore asylum processes, the Supreme Court allowed states to keep the policy in place, citing national security concerns. And let's not forget DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. While the court hasn't ended it entirely, recent decisions have restricted new applications, putting dreamers in a state of uncertainty. And boy, given Donald Trump's assumption of office this Monday coming, uncertainty is truly in the air. Let's talk about another policy, environmental. We know about climate change. We know about the challenges. We see all across the planet how the environment is changing drastically and making it difficult for human beings to live in certain places. And more recently, we have seen fires burning out of control in California and them having water challenges. In the realm of climate change, the Biden administration efforts to transition the U.S. to clean energy faced significant setback. In the West Virginia case versus the EPA, the court's conservative majority limited the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA's power, to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. This decision has far-reaching consequences for America's climate goal. And I must admit, given the intellect on the Supreme Court, they are so parochial in their approach in addressing some of these matters, which even a blind man can see. Frankly, this ruling essentially shifts the responsibility for major environmental reforms back to Congress, where progress is often gridlock, because as we know, there are two sides of the aisle, the Republicans and the Democrats, and they cannot agree on anything. What's the implications going forward? If you think about this, what does it mean for the prior government that just is leaving office and the one coming in? These rulings basically highlight the fact that there's tension between the executive branch and the conservative leading court. Biden tried to find alternative ways to effectuate some of these policies, but it's difficult to do so when you don't necessarily control Congress. You control the White House, but you don't control the courts. And frankly, the way it looks with a divided Congress, the road is steep going forward. The question is now, given these setbacks and Trump coming to office, where are we going? Do people who sit in the GOP, do people who sit in the courts and now going to the executive office think about the planet and those who live in it? Because most of these individuals are what I call seasoned. That means they're going up in age. And do they think about what planet their kids would inherit? How will these kids be able to pay off, and the younger folks pay off their student loan debt? What are they thinking? Are they just focused on the immediacy of the situation and satisfy their immediate needs? The Supreme Court decisions have reshaped the nation's policy landscape, sparking debates that will define America's future. What do you think about these rulings? Are the checks and balances truly working as they should? Or is this an overreach by the judiciary in the form of the Supreme Court? Let us know in the comments below. Although the Supreme Court's adverse decisions on student loans, environmental matters, and immigration significantly affected President Biden's legislative agenda, his tenure, which concludes on January 20th, 2025, is marked by significant legislative achievements, including the American Rescue Plan, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and the CHIPS and Science Act, which bolster economic recovery and technological advancement. His administration also prioritized climate change, but as I mentioned, much of it was eroded by the Supreme Court's decisions, adverse decisions. What he also did was also re-engage international allies, many of them turned off by the Trump administration and its isolationist policies. However, challenges in his administration, such as immigration, especially the border crisis, rising inflation, political polarization, and the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, negatively impacted his administration. Biden's decision to withdraw from the 2024 presidential race led to Vice President Kamala Harris' nomination, although she ultimately lost to Donald Trump. In his farewell address, Biden warned against the rise of oligarchy and the influence of a tech-industrialized complex, urging vigilance in protecting democracy and maybe having the foresight to see the influence of people like Elon Musk, who many have described as a white nationalist and a racist. Post-presidency, Biden plans to continue his public service via the Biden Institute and other initiatives, focusing on domestic and foreign policy matters. Joe Biden, a true American, a decent man, trying to do the right thing, trying to be president of all people, will leave office, but his legacy is in place and he won't be forgotten. Donald Trump is taking office on Monday, January 20th. The agenda that is in place will be put into play and will be in effect. And I will say this, God help us. Now, I will be having a program on this Monday when Donald Trump takes office, talking about a really interesting topic, which is paternity issues, or they say in Jamaica, jackets. And this is where around a child that is born is the mother has identified the father of the child and sometimes knowingly know that that person is not the father. We'll be having a lot of key decisions outlining the root causes for some of this matter and what can be done to remediate it. So join me this Monday, 8 p.m. to talk about paternity matters, not necessarily just in Jamaica, but there it's pervasive because statistics have shown that over 20% of kids are not the child of the father they're assigned to. And over 70% of fathers who have doubts about the kid's paternity, DNA testing have shown that they're not the father. Starting statistics. Join me Monday. Will be hot, should be hot. And before you leave, share, like, and subscribe. By the way, Monday's show will be on the Balance View channel, not on the Cranky Life channel.